They thought they had me cornered. The HOA claimed my car was a violation. Too old, too visible, not up to community standards. One morning, I walked outside and found the bright orange stickers slapped on my windshield. Tow notice. My stomach dropped. They gave me 48 hours before my car was gone forever. But here's the thing, I wasn't about to let them win. What they didn't know was that I had a plan, and when I executed it, the entire neighborhood watched them fall apart.
For years, I thought I'd found the perfect place to live. A quiet cul-de-sac, kids riding bikes until the streetlights flickered on, and neighbors who waved as they watered their lawns. On the surface, Oak Ridge Estates looked like a picture-perfect community, the kind you'd see in a glossy brochure. And at first, it really was. My wife Sarah and I had saved for years to buy our modest two-story home, the kind with a small front porch and just enough space for a garden that Sarah loved to tend. Our son Max would kick his soccer ball across the driveway, his laughter echoing in the still evening air. For a while, I convinced myself we'd found peace. But in Oak Ridge, peace always came with conditions. The HOA wasn't just a background presence. It was everywhere, written into the rules, whispered about at block parties, stamped into every monthly newsletter. They dictated the shade of beige you could paint your house. They fined people for leaving trash cans visible for more than an hour. They even held annual lawn audits. Yes, you heard that right. Clipboard inspections to ensure everyone's grass was exactly 2 inches tall. At first, I laughed it off. Sure, it was petty, but we could live with it. Most people did. After all, who wants to make enemies with the people who hold the power to find you into submission? But then the notices started. It began small. A warning tucked under my windshield about improper parking because my car's bumper supposedly edged past the invisible line of my driveway. Then came a letter about Sarah's flower pots. Non-compliant arrangement was the exact wording. The absurdity almost made me laugh. Almost. And yet, behind the laughter was something colder. Because it wasn't just about the rules. It was about control. The HOA, and especially its president, Margaret, the woman everyone quietly referred to as the Iron Fist in a cardigan, thrived on control. She had a reputation for turning neighborly disputes into written violations, for showing up uninvited to inspect backyards, and for filing complaints about things no normal person would ever notice. I tried to brush it off. I told myself not to take it personally, but I could feel it building, like storm clouds gathering on the horizon. And then, one morning, I saw it. An orange sticker slapped across my windshield, a tow notice. My car, the same one I parked in my driveway every single day, was now deemed a community hazard. At that moment, I realized this wasn't just about a car. It was about pushing back against a system that thrived on intimidation. And I knew the fight was about to begin.
At first, I thought the orange tow sticker was a mistake. Maybe someone from the HOA had walked by too quickly, confused my car for a guest's, and slapped it on. Mistakes happen, right? But when I peeled it off the windshield and read the words stamped in bold, "Vehicle in violation, subject to towing within 48 hours, a chill crept through me. It wasn't a mistake. The letter that followed made that clear. The HOA claimed my car violated community parking compliance, a phrase so vague it could mean almost anything. I wasn't parked on the street. I wasn't blocking a hydrant. I wasn't even close to my neighbor's driveway. I was parked on my own property. Still, they insisted I move it or lose it. Sarah thought I was overreacting. Maybe just park in the garage, she said, trying to calm me down. But it wasn't that simple. My garage was already full, not with junk, but with the normal storage every family has. Bikes, tools, boxes of holiday decorations. The garage wasn't meant to fit both my car and our lives. And besides, why should I have to? This was my driveway, my property, my right. But the HOA didn't see it that way. Within days, more notices arrived. One for the non-compliant shrubbery Sarah had planted. Another for Max leaving his soccer ball in the yard overnight. Each violation carried a warning, and each warning carried the threat of fines. It felt deliberate, Like they weren't just enforcing rules, they were testing me. The tension in the house grew heavier. Every time I opened the mailbox, I braced myself for another notice. Every time I saw Margaret walking her morning route with her clipboard, my stomach tightened. She didn't just glance at our house, she inspected it. Her eyes darted over every detail, like a hawk looking for prey. Then came the day I almost lost my car for good. It was a Saturday morning when I stepped outside and froze. A tow truck idled at the end of my driveway. The driver, a man in a neon vest, leaned against the door, clipboard in hand. He wasn't here by chance. He was here for my car. "Excuse me," I said, voice tight. "What do you think you're doing?" He didn't even look embarrassed. He just shrugged. "Got a call from the HOA. Said this vehicle's unauthorized. Papers are signed." My chest pounded. Unauthorized? It was my car, my driveway, my home. I demanded to see the paperwork. Sure enough, stapled to the top was a notice stamped HOA Enforcement Authorization, and at the bottom, in a neat cursive signature, was Margaret's name. For a split second, I thought I'd lost. But then something clicked. I asked the driver a simple question. "Do you see a city seal anywhere on that form?" He frowned, looked again, shook his head. And that's because this isn't a government order. This is a private HOA trying to act like law enforcement. You tow my car, and you'll be in violation of state law. The man hesitated. He looked from the form to me, back to the car, then finally shoved the clipboard under his arm. "Look, buddy, I don't get paid enough for this. Sort it out with your HOA." The tow truck rumbled away, leaving tire marks on the street. I'd won that round, but it was only the beginning. After that showdown, things escalated quickly. The HOA began flooding me with fines, $50 here, $100 there. Improper storage, unsightly appearance, failure to comply. Each one felt less like a rule and more like punishment for daring to fight back. When I refused to pay, they sent letters threatening liens on my house. Imagine that, losing your home not because you broke the law, but because you parked your car in your own driveway. Sarah tried to keep me calm, but I could see the worry in her eyes. Max stopped leaving his soccer ball outside, afraid it would get us fined again. Our home, once a place of comfort, had turned into a battlefield. And Margaret, she thrived on it. At the next HOA meeting, she stood at the podium, smiling smugly, as she announced new parking compliance initiatives. Neighbors shifted uncomfortably in their chairs, some nodding in agreement, others looking away, but no one spoke up. Margaret had ruled Oak Ridge Estates for years, and fear kept most people silent. But not me. When the meeting opened to residents, I raised my hand. "Why are we being punished for parking in our own driveways? Show me where in the bylaws it says we can't." Margaret's smile never wavered. "The bylaws grant the board discretion to enforce community standards," she replied smoothly. "If your vehicle is deemed a nuisance, it may be subject to removal." A nuisance. That was the word she used. My car, the one I drove to work every day, the one that kept food on our table, was a nuisance. The room fell silent. And then Margaret leaned forward, voice low and cutting. "Compliance is not optional, Mr. Miller. Either follow the rules or face the consequences." It was a threat, plain and simple. But I wasn't about to back down. I started documenting everything. Every notice, every fine, every encounter. I took photos, kept logs, and even recorded the tow attempt. If Margaret wanted a fight, I was going to give her one. Then came the moment that changed everything. One afternoon, as I sifted through another stack of HOA letters, I noticed something odd. The violation notices weren't just sloppy, they were identical. The same wording, the same format, even the same infractions repeated across different households. That's when I realized Margaret wasn't just targeting me, she was targeting everyone. I talked to neighbors, carefully, quietly, because trust was thin in Oak Ridge Estates. Some admitted they'd been fined for ridiculous things too. A garden gnome, a kid's bike left out overnight, even wind chimes. But most were too afraid to speak up. Then one night, a neighbor slipped me an envelope. Inside were copies of violation notices, the same ones I had, but dated months in advance. Pre-written, pre-stamped, ready to go before anyone had even done anything wrong. My hand shook as I read them. This wasn't enforcement. This was entrapment. And if Margaret was willing to fake violations, what else was she hiding? The pieces clicked into place. The secrecy, the threats, the identical notices. This wasn't about one car. This was about power, control, and profit. And suddenly, I knew. If I wanted to survive in Oak Ridge Estates, I couldn't just fight back quietly. I had to expose the system. That night, as I stared at the stack of evidence growing on my kitchen table, one thought echoed in my mind. If Margaret had her way, my car would already be gone. My home would be next. And yet deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was bigger than just me. Because once you pull back the curtain on power, you never know what you'll find. And I was about to find out.
The night before the HOA's big monthly meeting, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the pile of evidence spread out before me. Photos, letters, copies of violation notices that hadn't even been issued yet, but were already stamped and signed. Proof that Margaret and her inner circle weren't just enforcing rules, they were manufacturing them. My hands trembled as I organized everything into neat folders. For weeks, I had been the quiet target, absorbing their fines and threats, pushing back in whispers. But tomorrow, all of Oak Ridge Estates would see the truth. I didn't sleep that night. The meeting room was packed. Folding chairs lined the walls, every seat taken, neighbors standing shoulder to shoulder in the back. Margaret sat at the head of the table, clipboard resting like a weapon in front of her. She wore her usual smirk, the one that said she'd already won. Beside her sat the other board members, stiff-backed, eyes downcast. They rarely spoke. Margaret didn't need them to. The meeting droned on as usual. Landscaping budgets, pool hours, pet waste complaints. I watched as people shifted uncomfortably, half listening, half waiting for their chance to slip out the door. Then Margaret's voice sharpened. Next item on the agenda, vehicle compliance, specifically ongoing violations by Mr. Miller. Every head turned toward me. Margaret's smile widened. Despite repeated warnings, Mr. Miller continues to store his unauthorized vehicle in his driveway. The board has approved a final measure. Unless immediate compliance is achieved, a lien will be placed on his property. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Even those who had avoided eye contact with me now looked horrified. A lien, the ultimate weapon. It wasn't just about fines or harassment anymore. This was about my home. I stood slowly, folder in hand. My voice was steady, but inside my chest my heart thundered like a war drum. "You're accusing me of violations," I said, locking eyes with Margaret. "But what about your violations?" A hush fell over the room. Margaret's smirk faltered for the first time. "I don't know what you think you're implying." I cut her off. "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts." I opened the folder and held up the first page. "This is a violation notice I received last month for unsightly appearance. But take a closer look. The date on the bottom doesn't match the day it was issued. It was signed and stamped 2 months earlier." Murmurs spread through the room. Neighbors craned their necks to see. "And it's not just mine." I laid out more papers across the table, one after another. "Here are copies of violation notices given to multiple households, all of them signed, all of them stamped, before the supposed violations even happened." Gasps, whispers. Someone in the back muttered, "Wait, that looks just like mine." I didn't stop. I couldn't. This isn't enforcement. This is entrapment. Margaret and this board are manufacturing violations, planning fines in advance, punishing families for rules they haven't even broken yet. And I have proof. The room erupted. Some neighbors shouted in outrage, others demanded answers. The board members shifted uneasily in their seats, avoiding Margaret's glare. The walls of control she had built over years were cracking.
But Margaret didn't back down. She rose to her feet, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. "Enough of this nonsense," she barked. "These documents are confidential HOA records. Mr. Miller has no right to them. He has trespassed, stolen property, and now dares to spread lies in this meeting." Her voice shook with fury. She was cornered, and she knew it. I didn't flinch. I pulled out the final piece of evidence, the ace I had kept hidden until now. "This," I said, holding up a single page, "isn't from me. It's from one of your own." The room fell silent again. This was slipped to me by a neighbor too afraid to speak out publicly. It's a memo, written by Margaret, outlining a schedule of pre-written violations for the next quarter, specific homes, specific dates, and specific fines. I read out loud: Lot 17, unapproved paint color. Lot 23, lawn height. Lot 41, unauthorized vehicle. Each one signed and stamped in advance. I let the words hang in the air. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was electric. Neighbors exchanged wide-eyed glances. Some pulled out their phones, snapping photos. A woman in the back shouted, "That's my house number." Another cried out, "She fined me for that exact thing." Margaret's face drained of color. And then, in the most desperate move I'd ever seen, she lunged toward me, snatching for the folder. But before she could grab it, two neighbors stepped forward, blocking her path. "No," one of them said firmly. "We've had enough." The room erupted. Not in chaos, but in unity. Voices rose, not against me, but against her. Years of bottled-up resentment poured into the open. Complaints about petty fines, harassment, threats, all spilling into the open. "You fined me for a garden gnome," one man shouted. "You threatened to tow my daughter's car while she was visiting," another added. "My kid can't even leave his bike outside," someone else cried. Every voice was fuel to the fire, and Margaret was burning in it. Her composure shattered. She screamed over the crowd, "I am the board president. You will respect my authority." But her voice was drowned out by the wave of outrage. One board member finally stood, his voice trembling. "Margaret, this has gone too far. We can't support this anymore." Another followed, then another. In that moment, the board crumbled around her. Her allies, the very people she had relied on to back her every move, abandoned her under the weight of truth. Margaret stood alone. And I'll never forget the look in her eyes, a mixture of fury, disbelief, and fear. For years she had been untouchable, ruling with intimidation. But now, stripped bare in front of the very people she controlled, she was powerless. I didn't shout. I didn't gloat. I simply gathered the papers back into my folder and said the words that had been burning in my chest since the day this nightmare began. "You don't get to scare us anymore." The room erupted in applause. Neighbors stood, clapping, cheering, some even crying. The tide had turned, not because of me alone, but because the truth had finally come into the light. Margaret stormed out of the room, her heels clicking furiously against the tile. But the sound wasn't powerful anymore. It wasn't commanding. It was hollow. The Queen of Oak Ridge Estates had fallen. As the cheers died down, one thought echoed in my mind. The battle was over, but the war for our neighborhood's future had just begun.
The weeks after that HOA meeting felt unreal. For the first time in months, no letters on my door, no warnings, no threats, just silence. And slowly, I realized what that silence meant. Peace. Margaret's fall came quickly. Neighbors who'd once stayed quiet began speaking up, and by the next election, she was gone. The new board promised fairness and transparency, and they delivered. The playground reopened, the pool filled again, and for the first time, the neighborhood felt alive. Even when I'd see Margaret's car creeping by, her power was gone. She was just another bitter face in the crowd. Then came the video, our confrontation online for the world to see. It went viral, turning our small fight into a symbol. People everywhere shared their own HOA nightmares. And standing there, watering the flowers beside Sarah, hearing a neighbor thank me for standing up, I felt something new, pride. We didn't just reclaim our lawns or driveways, we reclaimed our right to live without fear. Because in the end, secrets don't stay buried forever, not even in a perfect-looking neighborhood. And sometimes, the most ordinary-looking neighborhood can hide the darkest stories. So maybe the real question isn't whether I won against the HOA. The real question is, what about you? What's hiding in your neighborhood, behind closed doors, locked basements, or the fine print of HOA bylaws? Because one day, you might stumble onto something you were never meant to see. And when that happens, what will you do?
If you enjoyed seeing Justice Served, make sure you hit subscribe, because the next HOA nightmare might just be wilder than this one. Don't miss it.